coverage may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
We're working to connect a region of over 600 million bridges between our lands.
We welcome you today to our special episode of ASEAN in Focus, focusing here in the Philippines mainly for the upcoming State of the Nation address of President Rodrigo Duterte. The SONA, which is delivered by the President of the Philippines every year, is a constitutional obligation required by Article 7, Section 23 of the 1987 Constitution. Welcome, I'm Alma Angeles.
Good afternoon, I'm Kaloy Tabunda from the New Year University ASEAN Studies Center, and welcome to ASEAN in Focus. And as Alma said here, we're focusing today on the President's State of the Nation address, which will be on in a few hours. As we all know, the SONA is also a venue that allows the President to report on the state of the country, unveil the government's agenda for the coming year, and also propose to Congress certain legislative measures.
All right, and we have a special guest.
Yeah, before we continue with our program. Yeah.
And who is our special guest?
We have here a good friend here, Professor Lucio Pitlo III, who is a convener of the Asia-Pacific Pathways to Progress and is also a member of the board of the Philippine Association of China Studies and a professor at the Ateneo de Manila University. Mr.
All right.
Lucio Pitlo.
Welcome, sir. But before we continue with our program, first we turn you over to Judith Llanera, who will give us the latest news for SONA and other headlines in the region. Judith?
Hello and welcome to ASEAN in Focus. I'm Judith Llanera, and now to the news. President Rodrigo Duterte has repeatedly expressed hope to see the promise of Mindanao fulfilled, or at the very least approaching fulfillment before the end of his term in 2022. Since then, his administration has taken great strides towards doing exactly that. Perhaps the most notable accomplishment in the road to achieving long-lasting peace in Mindanao is the signing of the organic law for the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, or ALBARM, or Republic Act 11054 on July 26, 2018. Just 3 days after he delivered his third State of the Nation address, or SONA. Duterte was expected to sign the ALBARM, often called the Bangsamoro Organic Law, or BOL, during his 2018 address, but it was stalled after the House of Representatives failed to ratify the BOL due to an unexpected change of leadership in the House of Representatives. The BOL seeks to establish a new Bangsamoro political entity to replace the Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, or ARMM, and achieve a national reconciliation with the Moro rebel groups. This law, a result of peace talks, institutionalized provisions of the Comprehensive Agreement on the Bangsamoro, the 2014 peace agreement signed by the government and the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, or MILF. After a two-part plebiscite on January 21st and February 6th, 2019, the BOL was officially ratified, and the new Bangsamoro region, which covers the provinces of Basilan, Lanao del Sur, Maguindanao, Sulu, and Tawi-Tawi, the same provinces as the abolished ARMM. On February 22nd, members of the group that will oversee the newly formed Bangsamoro region, the Bangsamoro Transition Authority, or BTA, took their oath before the President. Currently, there are 76 BTA members with 42 nominees of the MILF, 10 representatives from Moro National Liberation Front, or MNLF, and 26 nominated by the government. The BTA is led by its interim Chief Minister Alhaj Murad Ibrahim, MILF chairman. Soon after the BTA members took oath, the BARM was formally inaugurated at the Sharif Kabunsuan Cultural Complex in Cotabato City on March 29th, which marks the transition period to the establishment of the Bangsamoro parliamentary government in 2022. Duterte later signed Executive Order 79 on April 24, 2019, implementing the Annex on Normalization under the Comprehensive Agreements on the Bangsamoro, which provides for the creation of an inter-cabinet cluster mechanism on normalization to prioritize, coordinate, and mobilize government agencies in the implementation of aspects of the program covering security, socio-economic development, confidence-building measures, and transitional justice and reconciliation. Meanwhile, Philippine National Police or PNP Chief General Oscar Albayalde on Monday inspected the deployment of police officers along Commonwealth Avenue in Quezon City hours before the Fourth State of the Nation Address or SONA of President Rodrigo Roa Duterte. Albayalde said the PNP respects the right of the participants to free expression and assembly.
Taon-taon na natin alam kung ano dapat gawin. At taon-taon na rin natin sinasabi, pag may kayo, no exercise maximum tolerance. Alam niyo naman siguro kung hindi sabihin na maximum tolerance, di ba? Yes, sir! Kung maximum tolerance, medyo maximum tolerance. Hindi naman yung sinasaktan na kayo, eh maximum tolerance. Ha? So, hindi naman galing gano'n. Ayan. Okay lang. Sinasabi natin, nagsisigaw lang yan. Hayaan lang natin. Kahit na pagpupumarahin na lang tayo, pinupura kayo, hayaan nyo lang. Anong sabihin nila? Mag-awa sila sa kakasigaw. Hayaan nyo lang sila, provided that they do not violate the law.
Albayalde said that he placed the entire PNP on full alert status since Saturday to ensure the availability of security forces to perform law enforcement and public safety duties as the President of the Republic of the Philippines delivers the State of the Nation address at the opening of the 18th Congress. Police units in the region have been ordered to intensify focused law enforcement, border control, massive checkpoint operations, and other intervention activities to address the threats to peace and order situation in the region during the President's SONA. Albayalde said they have not monitored any serious threat of attacks. The SONA, which is delivered by the President of the Philippines every year, is a constitutional obligation required by Article 7, Section 23 of the 1987 Constitution. It is a venue that allows the President to report on the state of the country, unveil the government's agenda for the coming year, and also propose to Congress certain legislative measures. The PRO-9 has placed its forces on alert status following the recent Abu Sayyaf attack in a military camp in the province of Sulu. Meanwhile, police appeal to the general public to do their part in maintaining peace and order in their respective localities and report to nearest police stations or to the authorities the presence of suspicious personality, groups or individuals in their area. Mindanao's business leaders said they expect Mindanao's development to take center stage when President Rodrigo Duterte delivers the State of the Nation Address or SONA 2019 on Monday, July 22nd. Mindanao Business Council or MINBC Chairman Vicente Lau said he also hopes the completion of the Mindanao Railway System or MRS during the term of President Duterte. The Mindanao Railway System is a 2,000-kilometer railway with two segments that will connect various provinces in Mindanao. Filipino Banana Growers and Exporters Association or PBGEA Executive Director Stephen Antig said He expects the SONA to emphasize support for agriculture, especially on the export sector. Antig said the banana industry hopes government action on tariffs as well as other assistance, such as subsidies in terms of farm inputs. He also hopes for the removal, if not the reduction, of some government fees. Davao City Chamber of Commerce and Industry Incorporated President Arturo Milan said local businesses want to see the implementation this year of the government's flagship projects in the countryside. Aside from the Mindanao Railway, Milan said focus should also be given to the Davao Airport Modernization Project, the Davao Samal Connecting Bridge Project, and other big-ticket projects in Mindanao. He added that he wishes the president good health, so he will finish his term and complete his plans for the country and for the Filipino people. Meanwhile, a Mindanao Development Authority or MINDA Chair Nathaniel Dalumpina said he is optimistic the President's SONA on Monday would focus on Mindanao's peace and development initiatives. He said they are also looking forward to hearing directives from the President that will effect a long-term and inclusive development for Mindanao. He particularly cited the President's ongoing support for the revival of barter trading between island provinces and their counterparts in the BIMP-AYAGA or Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, East ASEAN Growth Area. Dalumpina said based on the highlights from the pre-SONA fora conducted this month, the Duterte administration remains to be focused on providing a comfortable life for every Filipino by providing more jobs and opportunities, prioritizing catalytic infrastructure projects, and bringing development closer to the countryside. In other news, the United States on Saturday expressed concern over reports that China is hampering other countries' oil and gas activities in the South China Sea and accused Beijing of acting like a bully. The State Department said such acts by China, it did not say when they are alleged to have happened, threaten regional peace and security. It said these acts were interfering in particular with Vietnamese oil and gas exploration and production. And I quote, as Secretary Pompeo noted earlier this year, by blocking development in the SCS through coercive means, China prevents ASEAN members from accessing more than $2.5 trillion in recoverable energy reserves. Spokeswoman Morgan Ortago said in a statement, ASEAN is the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. Vietnam and China have long been locked in a maritime disagreement over the resource-rich waters of the South China Sea. The U.S. statement said that China's reclamation and militarization of disputed outposts in the SCS, along with other efforts to assert its unlawful SCS maritime claims, including the use of maritime militia to intimidate, coerce, and threaten other nations, undermine the peace and security of the region. The United States firmly opposes coercion and intimidation by any claimant to assert its territorial or maritime claims, Ortagus added. China should cease its bullying behavior and refrain from engaging in this type of provocative and destabilizing activity. Vietnam has accused China of trespassing and demanded a Chinese survey ship in the South China Sea withdraw in the latest flashpoint over the disputed territory. The two countries have long been locked in a maritime disagreement over the resource-rich waters, with Chinese claiming nearly all of it. But the international community has largely sided with other claimants, Vietnam, Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, Taiwan, and Brunei, citing the importance of freedom of navigation. On Friday, Vietnam's Ministry of Foreign Affairs criticized China's survey vessel, the Haiyang DZ-8, and its escort ships for entering its waters in recent days, although it did not give exact dates. This is completely in the sea area of Vietnam, a statement said, adding they had contacted the Chinese multiple times on different diplomatic channels to protest the act. The Vietnamese have persistently requested them to withdraw all these ships from Vietnam's waters and respects its sovereignty. While the Chinese did not confirm the presence of the vessel in the South China Sea, a Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesman said Wednesday that they hope Vietnam can truly respect China's jurisdiction over the waters. In June, a Chinese vessel and a fishing boat from the Philippines collided in the South China Sea, sparking public outrage as Manila accused the trawler of abandoning the 22 Filipino crew members. China defended itself as saying their ship had bumped into the vessel and had attempted a rescue, but were afraid of being besieged by other Filipino fishing boats. Dr. Kaloy Tabunda and Ms. Alma Angeles will interview our guest for today.
Thank you, Judith Llanera, for the latest news in the Southeast Asian region and for SONA.
Okay, so we interview now Mr. Lucio Pitlo, who is a convener of the Asia Pacific Pathways to Progress. It's a non-government think tank organization.
Welcome, sir.
Okay, welcome
Thank
back
you,
again.
ma'am. Thank you, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to your
Again,
program.
because this is your second time of
Yes, sir.
ASEAN in Focus program. Okay, we go back to the SONA. Last June, there's a survey by the Pulse Asia, which identified 5 issues which Filipinos expect the President to mention in his State of the Nation address. The first one is the issue on higher wages. The second one is the lower prices of goods, so it addresses inflation. Third is more jobs. And the fourth one is the South China Sea issue.
Okay.
And fifth one is the drugs war. So maybe we discuss this one by one. So the first issue is the need for higher wages. The need for higher wages. Okay, what can you say about this?
Well, 4 out of 5 issues were domestic. So this goes to show how important the domestic agenda is for this upcoming 4th SONA by the President. So again, despite of the foreign policy issues that are getting a lot of media attention of late, the President and the people really expect this government to deliver more on promises on economic advancement, economic progress. So higher wages, of course, is a natural demand. You know, for many years, labor groups had always complained about low wages, and despite the fact that our country had become a better investment destination in recent years, we're getting a lot of.
We're number 3 now in the latest survey.
There was even one survey
last year. That was last year. We were number 1 among the top investment destinations, and now we dropped to 3rd place.
So I think back in 2018 there was the U.S. News and World Ranking report. A U.S. media company made a survey and put the Philippines actually on top place.
Okay.
That was 2018. So that goes to show how much we had progressed in terms of attracting foreign capital. But I think the challenge now is how government will try to make these numbers, these big figures, these rosy figures translate to benefits,
actual realities
to people on the ground.
That can be felt by people.
The trickle-down effect.
Yes.
Okay. The second is lower prices of goods. So
inflation rate
ikaw,
has
Alma,
gone down to...
You are a housewife. Do you really feel that...
I'm a mother.
She's a mother.
I'm a
Do you
mother.
really feel that we really need to have lower prices of goods?
Yes, I do feel that as well. I think it's all over the world naman that we're feeling the hike,
crunch, yes.
the crunch, not just because of here. Are we affected by the U.S.-China trade crisis? And how is President Duterte addressing this? Do you think
Well,
so?
I think the trade war will affect us. So far, it hasn't affected us much. But if it gets prolonged, if it gets more protracted between the two major powers, then we will be affected because these two countries are among our major trade partners in our.
In what way will it trickle down to us?
Well, some investments. There could be opportunities for us. No? In a sense that Chinese investments.
So it's both threat and opportunity.
It's both a potential threat and an opportunity. We can probably get redirected trade and investment flows. Like Chinese businessmen or Chinese businesses who wants to continue doing business, exporting to U.S. may want to relocate their production outside China, like in Vietnam, like Philippines.
That's
elsewhere in
what they're
Southeast
doing
Asia.
in Vietnam right
Yeah.
now.
So
So
to
Vietnam is
continue,
actually reaping the advantages of the
Exactly.
U.S.-China trade war now.
So going-
Vietnam is really doing a lot in
Yeah.
terms of attracting capital from both U.S. and China.
So going back to SONA, how is the president addressing
How do you expect the president?
How do you
to
expect the president to address this higher prices, or has he addressed it? How did he address it? Do you think?
I think many developing countries, inflation is increasingly a problem because, for instance, the inputs for production are becoming are being used. Land, for instance, increasingly more land is being taken away from agriculture into industrial or commercial purposes. So land is a major input for food production. And so we know that in recent months, we allowed importation of major food commodities like rice.
Rice.
And that
We
enabled
adopted the rice tarification law already.
the rice tarification law. So it did lower the price of rice, which is a basic food staple for our country. But at the same time, of course, it also hurt local growers.
Yes.
So it's a puzzle that government has to balance. It wants to maintain low prices for consumers, but it has to protect local growers also.
Yeah, and we have to remember that most of our farmers are actually still rice farmers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they have really not benefited economically because of depressed prices,
Yeah.
because of higher prices of inputs. And then we have this rice tarification law now, which allows the entry of lower price rice. So
Yeah.
it's for the benefit of many consumers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the backbone of our farming industry,
Sure.
the rice farmers,
Sure.
will be greatly affected negatively by this act. Okay. Yung third issue
More jobs.
is more jobs. Okay. How can the president address this, or how
Has he
the president
addressed this during his term?
I think part of the efforts of the government is to make the Philippines more attractive, more competitive compared to, say, our regional peers. And investment in infrastructure is actually one way by which we can address this competitiveness gap. Our other neighbors in ASEAN had invested really massive in terms of rehabilitating and rebuilding, improving their infrastructure, because this is one way to attract both domestic and foreign capital. With infrastructure, you can reduce traffic and logistical constraints, and you can probably ensure more sustainable, secure, safe access to utilities, water, energy. We know of late now we're getting yellow alerts for power.
Yes.
We're having problems with potable water supply. So infrastructure is really very important to address these basic concerns. And our economy is growing, so the demand for resources is growing. Demand for power, water, they're only bound to increase. So therefore, the capacity also has to meet the increasing requirement. So I think the efforts by government for this build program
Yes.
is one.
Yes. Yes.
I think the second is the tax.
Yeah, the train.
So the
train
tax
laws.
reform.
Tax reform.
Tax
Yes.
reform. So we know that the train and now the new version they call Trabajo bill.
Yes, yes,
But
Trabajo bill.
part of this tax reform packages was to actually lower corporate income tax. Now, I think from 30 to 20%. That would make us competitive, because other factors being equal, tax is one major consideration for foreign investors to come in. So if they know that Philippines has higher taxes, for foreign capital, that might restrain some foreign investors who might be interested, to consider Philippines. So now I think on the tax aspect, we're getting there. We're getting better.
Okay. On jobs, there's this current issue of the Chinese, Chinese laborers coming in and stealing jobs away from the Filipinos. What can you say about this?
Two things. I think the first one is about the offshore gaming.
Yes.
It's actually, if you look at the figures, the most number of Chinese workers getting into this country are being employed in that offshore gaming sector. I think from that angle, I could say that the job losses, being jobs that are taken away from locals are not that much,
Okay.
because one, the language proficiency is required, because the target market for this industry is still very much the mainland market. So you need Chinese language proficiency. And I think these POGOs, this Philippine Offshore Gaming Operations, in fact also creates local jobs. Drivers, cooks, back-end support for even some of the handlers, some of those involved in the operations of these POGOs are actually Filipinos. So that is one. I think the other aspect has some more issues, infrastructure, for instance. So Duterte made the infrastructure build program one of his flagship projects, and we expect that this project will also create local jobs. And I think for China-funded or China-backed projects, it is a concern because some argue that some Chinese workers are coming in here to work for these infrastructure projects. But from my reading, I think there is some understanding between Filipino and Chinese partners for these infrastructure projects that only a part of the labor will be sourced from China, but the bulk of the workforce should remain locally sourced.
Okay. All right, before we continue on, I think we need to go on a break. But right after this short break, we'll be back with our special guest.
Mr. Lucio Pitlo.
Yes.
We'll be back.
Health is our most important asset, and it should
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Your weekly dose of entrepreneurial inspiration to update you on the latest developments in the world of business. Get close and personal with CEOs and thought leaders to help you discover valuable insights. Sharpen your instincts for smart decision making with the latest markets and economic trends, disruptive ideas, global innovations, social entrepreneurship, and other leading edge business ideas. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business every Saturday from 5 to 6 p.m. Open for Business, from vision to action.
Landmarks, Linggo, alas 6 hanggang alas 7 ng gabi.
Know the latest news and information here and abroad. In Aguila, Balita. Track the latest happenings in the provinces in Aguila Provincia. Be aware of important events in Asia in ASEAN in Focus, and be updated in the biggest news around the world in Eagle News International. Tune into Mata ng Aguila and get the day's headlines and news that are sharp, accurate, and objective. Only here at Net25.
Mga maiinit na balita mula sa iba't ibang bahagi ng Pilipinas. Ang balitaang pumapagaspas. Saan bang panig ng bansa? Kasama si Nelson Lubao.
Mga armas naman na kumpiska ng PNP sa isinagawang Oplan Katok.
Layunin ng programa na bigyang pugay at kilalanin ang kahalagahan ng
isinagawang ika-4 na Provincial Joint Security Coordinating Center.
Bayan ng Lilabohol na resulta ng pagkamatay ng isa sa mga driver.
Nasa 452 na ang mga armas na nakatago sa police vault.
Agila, Pilipinas! Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 10:30 ng umaga. Dito lamang sa Net25.
Para sa mga viewers namin sa Middle East at North Africa via OSN, hello po sa inyong lahat dyan. Ako po si Sam Cepeda.
Ako po si Olivia Nadit Figueroa at araw-araw tayong magkasama sa Mata ng Agila.
Dito po sa Net25 at OSN, sigurado at home ka dito.
Let's hear this reaction from Hawaii on what he wants to hear on President Duterte's SONA.
To President Rodrigo Roa Duterte, Mr. President, congratulations on making it to your halfway point in your administration. We wish you the best in the remaining years of your presidency. What some of us here in Hawaii especially are curious about and aspire for is for our younger generations, including my children, to really appreciate Philippine culture and know more about the Philippines. And as you know, one of the ongoing issues we're experiencing, especially here in the U.S., is the rising cost of a college or post-secondary education. Now, there are also some a trend, if you will, of Filipino Americans or even expats from other countries wanting to send their own children to younger Filipinos back to the Philippines to pursue a higher education there. So our question / hope is whether your administration will have any initiatives to further improve the quality of college education there. And as a way to incentivize our younger Filipinos to come home, spend a few years, and really appreciate Filipino culture, and at the same time get a very good and competitive college education. That's all, in mabuhay po. Maraming salamat.
Samantala, kumuha naman tayo ng update mula sa Batasang Pambansa. Patuloy ang pagdating ng mga personalidad na dadalo sa SONA ni Pangulong Duterte. Naroon si Mean Corvera. Mean?
Tuloy ang malakas na pagbuhos ng ulan dito sa Batasan Complex kung saan isasagawa ng Pangulo ang kanyang ika-4 na State of the Nation address. Sa kabila niyan, maaga pa rin dumalo ang mga opisyal ng gobyerno, mga diplomats at mga mambabatas na makikinig na sa SONA ng Pangulo. Kapansin-pansin na maagang dumating dito ay mga miyembro ng official family ng Pangulo at mga miyembro ng kanyang gabinete. Kabilang na dyan sina Presidential Spokesman Salvador Panelo, si Communications Secretary Martin Andanar, kasama yung kanyang asawa, ang si Nur Miswari. At nakita na rin natin dumating sina dating senador at communications o DICT Secretary Gringo Nakan at si dating Pangulong Fidel Ramos. Si Secretary Hunasan ay nagbibigay ngayon ng pahayag sa media. Pakinggan natin siya.
nagsiset ng pace. Hindi ito puro speech at salita. Build, build, build. Something is happening on the ground.
Ano lang yung magiging priority ang nalalagay sa taong ng
Connectivity. Connect everybody to each other. Faster, cheaper, if not free. Kaya may free wifi. At saka more secure. Government to other governments, domestic and global. Diba? Government to business, government to citizens, and everybody to each other. To encourage, ito na yun. Implemented na yun, no? Ongoing. So kung pwede pang mag-4th, 5th, and 6th, and 7th telco, mas mabuti para bumaba yung presyo at maging mas efficient, mas mabilis.
Si Secretary Drigo ng pumasok na siya dito sa plenary kung saan isasagawa ng Pangulo ang kanyang SONA. Yan muna ang sitwasyon mula dito sa mababang kapulungan ng Kongreso sa Eagle News kay Ann Corbera, AM1 with 25.
Alamin naman natin ang sitwasyon sa IBP Road. Naroon si Mar Gabriel. Mar?
Bagaman binabayo ng malakas na ulan, patuloy ang pagdagsa ng mga grupo na sumusuporta kay Pangulong Duterte dito sa eastbound lane ng IBP Road sa Batasan Hill sa Quezon City. Base sa pinakahuling crowd estimate ng NCRPO, umaabot na sa 1,460 ng mga pro-Duterte rallies ang nagsasagawa ng programa. Kanya-kanya silang silong sa mga tent at habang ang iba naman ay gumagamit ng payong. Kasama na rito ang mga grupo ng mga magsasaka na nagpapasalamat sa paglagda ng Pangulo sa RA 11291 o ang Magna Carta for Poor. Nagsalita naman kanina sa entablado sina PAGCOR Chairwoman Andrea Domingo at si DILG ASEC RJ Echeverry. Nananatili namang mapayapa ang sitwasyon dito sa IBP Road, bagaman unti-unti na ring bumibigat ang daloy ng mga sasakyan. Para sa Eagle News, Mar Gabriel, IM1 with 25.
Thank you very much, Mar Gabriel, reporting live at the IBP Road. And that is the latest news in the Southeast Asian nations. Stay updated about the ASEAN region. I'm Judith Timera, and I'm one with 25. Back to you, Alma and Dr. Kaloy Tabunda.
Thank you very much, Judith. All right, we're back to
okay, before we proceed with our interview, meron lang tayong breaking news now. With 266 out of 297 votes,
yes,
the members of the House of Representatives picked Cayetano as their leader when the legislative session opened this morning. Along with, of
that
course,
was supposed to be in Judith's news, but
yes,
it was
along with si Senator Soto,
it.
he was also re-elected as the Senate President. Okay, back to our interview. Balik tayo dun sa issue on the what the Filipinos want President Duterte to speak on in this State of the Nation. The first issue is the fifth issue actually is the drugs war, and I remember you just wrote an article on President Duterte's drugs war. Can you discuss that here?
Sure. Of course, it remains a very controversial subject but still remains nonetheless a government priority. Duterte repeatedly made statements that his campaign to root out illegal drugs will remain unremitting and unrelenting as in day one. But of course, opposition, the critics, civil society, church groups, and of course international community, of course, is challenging government to actually make the campaign less violent and more humane. So I think the challenge now, because for the past years, survey results from 2017 and 2018 show that the public still support the drug war, despite of its flaws and its imperfections. So I think the challenge for government now, 3 years to come under this administration, is to demonstrate that those police or law enforcers involved, in drugs will be put to bar, no? And at the same time, the excesses and abuses in the conduct of the drug campaign will be reined in, will be disciplined. And I think the most important is emphasize the health or the rehabilitative aspect of the campaign.
The drugs problem is a health issue,
Yeah.
not a criminal issue.
Yeah.
So do you think we are a safer Philippines since President Duterte's reign? What do you think?
Based on figures from the Philippine National Police, the incidence of crime had
gone down.
So there was a reduction in serious crimes, petty crimes, especially on the streets. So the police are relating this or linking this with their campaign against drugs. They were saying that there is a correlation between the prevalence of drugs in the streets and crimes. So if you reduce drug proliferation, you can actually contribute in lowering crime incidents.
Yeah, but it's been 3 years already since he promised that he will get rid of this problem. How optimistic are you that this will be solved within the next 3 years?
I think the president underestimated the intensity and the gravity of the problem. I think in his first year, he actually realized the enormity.
I think he mentioned it
the enormity of the problem. So I think now moving forward, he realized that the campaign has to be sustained. But again, a new dimension, I hope, no? A new dimension of the campaign, some beginnings had already been made. No? For instance, 5 months after starting the crackdown against illegal drugs, the administration enabled the construction of the largest drug rehab facility in Nueva Ecija.
Although I think
it was a donation by a Chinese businessman.
Unfortunately, it's just utilization rate is just 30%.
Yeah. It remains underutilized, and I think the challenge now is to try to use the facility more. Bring in more patients from not only from Central Luzon but also from nearby provinces.
Although I have one student who is a police colonel, and his paper is on. He said that I think all provinces should have their own rehabilitation centers, because if you bring all the if you bring all the drug dependents to the Ecija, it will be very costly. It will be very costly also for the families at least, because once your relative is there, the tendency is for Filipinos to visit them all the time. So that would be very costly.
I think government also realized that. If you look at the capacity of the Nueva Ecija facility, it's really massive, 10,000 bed capacity. So until now, the utilization rate is very low. There were proposals to put a PIDEA academy there to try to maximize the facility. But in other parts of the country, regional drug rehab facilities are being set up. I think last year we had 4 that were put up in Mindanao. We have one in Sarangani, we have one in Agusan, as well as in Bukidnon. And I think Davao City will have its second drug rehab facility to be finished soon. So I think the efforts to make this more nimble, and more geographically dispersed, is important. If you look at the figures, based on I think 2017 or early 2018, those who surrendered, from the drug campaign, over 1 million. I think 1.2 million drug users surrendered. About 300,000 of them underwent rehabilitation, half of which from PNP, renewal and wellness programs, and then half from community-supported centers. So we see that of 1.2, of over 1 million drug users, only 300,000 underwent rehabilitation. The rest did not. So you see that the big gap, that has to be addressed.
Okay, so we finished with the four domestic issues.
We now go to the controversial foreign policy of President Duterte, which is the West Philippine Sea or the South China Sea. How do you track his
performance here? Response. Kasi, it seems that many Filipinos are really satisfied, are not really happy with the government response on the South China Sea.
I think the President's response in relation to issues on West Philippine Sea or South China Sea, I can see certain consistencies now over the last 3 years. The first one is management of disputes.
Yes.
So I think the president early on realized that these disputes had always been there. For decades, it's a multi-party dispute. There are 6 claimant states. They have overlapping claims. They have territorial and maritime spats, and it's so easy to disentangle these things. So that's one. So putting in the necessary bilateral and regional dispute management mechanisms is very important to ensure that these disputes do not affect overall relations. So I think one of the focus of the administration was along those lines. The second is building confidence. Again, trust deficit on China in this country remains relatively low, compared to, say, U.S. or Europe or Japan. So the president recognizes that this is a hurdle, in order to improve relations with China. People has to have a better sense of trust and confidence in China. But again, issues in West Philippine Sea continue to complicate our ties with China. So building confidence by way of relations between, for instance, Coast Guard, Philippine Coast Guard and their Chinese counterpart, naval diplomacy between Philippine Navy and their Chinese counterpart. These are taking place on a bilateral as well as on a regional basis. So we get Chinese ships, from PLA visiting our ports, like in Manila and in Davao, and reciprocally, we also send our ships, to China to take part in their exercises, as well as
we're doing that now.
We're
yes, sir. Sending Philippine ships to China.
Yeah. So the last 17th year anniversary of the PLA Navy, so ASEAN countries,
ASEAN countries
send our ships.
Yes, yes.
So these are being done to try to assure, China has to assure its littoral neighbors that the PLA Navy is growing, but its growth will not be at the expense of other countries. But of course, China has to do more, still on that.
Okay, it's been 3 years since we won the arbitration. Where are we now?
Well,
what has the Philippine government done to implement the decision?
Well, it remains to be seen. A lot of people were expecting government to actually follow through with the ruling and try to enforce it. But Duterte early on made mention that it is very difficult to enforce the ruling because one, there is no enforcement mechanism. And so what he, I think, is trying to do is to use it possibly as a leverage, as a bargaining chip in dealing with China. But of course, that
has he ever mentioned that in dealings with China?
We established a bilateral consultation mechanism with China in 2016, and based on former Secretary of Foreign Affairs and now House Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano, he did raise the matter of the West Philippine Sea had been the matter of the ruling, the 2016 arbitral ruling had been raised twice. During those discussions. So if we take that, then that means that the issue of the arbitration ruling is actually being discussed, but in a channel agreed upon by both sides, which is this bilateral consultation mechanism.
Yeah, because whether we accept it or not, there's this knowing feeling that the government seems to have adopted a defeatist attitude when it comes to, particularly now that we have this current issue with the
gender. You think the government is adopting a defeatist attitude?
Sure, I think the optics could have been improved. The rhetoric, the posturing could have been improved. But I think there is also the effort to downplay the incidents, to try to tell the public that these things are not isolated. They take place. I mean, between us, for instance, and Indonesia, we have issues on some of our fishermen and their fishing vessels. Sometimes they get strayed in Indonesian waters. Our fishermen getting...
And they get shot.
Their boats get sunk. So I think the impetus of the government is to try to look at these maritime incidents as just part of the relations, meaning they are important because fishermen are among the poorest in this country. So they always get a lot of public sympathy. Every time there is an untoward incident that will befall them, as what happened last June 9 in Recto Bank. So that the demand for the people for government to demonstrate its resolve to protect the poorest of the poor is always there. And of course to show that we are doing much to stake our claims, make our position in the West Philippine Sea clear. So I think that the dilemma is you want to expand relations with China. These incidents take place, so how do you try to ensure that they do not actually affect overall relations? Again, it's not easy. A lot of rough edges. You have different cabinet secretaries making their own take on what happened, and of course, people did not like the way government seemed to respond to crisis, incidents. So, but I think moving forward in the next 3 years, I hope that the Recto Bank incident, for instance, last month, will be a wake-up call for the administration that there needs to be a better way of handling these incidents and communicating it to the public.
But the foreign policy also involves, he's adopting an independent foreign policy, right? How do you think he has handled the United States?
Well,
with the issue of the West Philippine Sea or South China Sea as well.
I think as far as the West Philippine Sea is concerned, government is really trying to keep and maintain the alliance with the U.S., despite of the rhetoric to the contrary. So the president's issue with the U.S. is a bit personal. But I don't think he is allowing he's allowing his personal issues with the U.S. to affect the security, the bilateral security ties. The bilateral security dialogue between Philippines and U.S. recently was held here in Manila, and I think there were efforts from the U.S. side, also from the Philippine side, to maintain, to keep the alliance, to respond to changing times. So while the independent foreign policy tries to maintain our traditional partnership and our traditional alliances, it also opens doors to partnership with newfound friends, which are not necessarily our traditional players in Philippine foreign policy. China is there, but Russia is also there.
Yes. Okay. I think we have a report coming in.
Okay.
Can you get it,
Yeah, invitation of Senate and the lower house to President Rodrigo Duterte for the joint session has already been accepted by Malacanang, and President Duterte is now on his way to the Batasang Pambansa. We have Vic Sumentak on the line. Vic?
Yes, official nang natanggap ng Office of the President ang resolusyon ng dalawang kapulungan ng Kongreso kaugnay ng imbitasyon para sa joint regular session ng 18th Congress kay Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte. Ang resolusyon na ito ay pinagtibay ng mababang kapulungan ng Kongreso at saka ng Senado na nag-iimbita sa Presidente para sa joint session bilang opisyal na hudyat ng pagsisimula ng sesyon ng ika-18 Kongreso. Sa ngayon, batay sa tanggapan ng Pangulo ay naghahanda na rin ang Pangulo para sa kanyang pagpunta sa Batasan Complex para doon niya i-deliver ang kanyang ika-4 na State of the Nation Address o SONA ngayong hapon ng Lunes. So, antabayanan pa natin at mamaya-maya ay ganap na alas 4 batay sa legislative clock o schedule ng sora ng Pangulo. Alas 4 dapat ay may deliver na ng Pangulo ang kanyang ika-4 na State of the Nation Address. Batay sa naging pahayag ng mga cabinet officials, ang inaasahan na SONA speech ng Pangulo kung hindi magkakaroon ng ad-lib ay tatagal lamang ng 45 hanggang 1 oras na sinasabing mas maikli kumpara sa mga nakalipas na SONA ni Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte. Vic Sumentak, Eagle News, I am 125.
All right, thank you very much, Vic Sumentak. Ayan, we have a last question for Professor.
Final question, Professor Lucio. If you were the president or if you're the speechwriter of the SONA, ano yung ilalagay? What would you put in the president's speech, particularly on the South China Sea issue? Kasi this is the most controversial issue right now.
Sure.
Among other things, also the drug war. But yeah.
Probably I'll put there the importance of maintaining peace and stability in the South China Sea, but it should not come at the expense of us actually acquiescing or becoming less assertive in stating our position.
Parang defeatist.
In our claims, especially for the domestic public. Again, government has to ensure that messaging is very important. And people has to be convinced that this administration is really serious and sincere. Again, there are diplomatic sensitivities with language, so that has to be balanced. But I think on the main, it's very important that the public, the Filipino people, is reassured that this government is protecting our rights and our interests in this very important and critical waterway. But at the same time, also not closing doors to dialogue, not only with China, but also to other countries with which we have issues with in the West Philippine Sea.
Parang, I remember, I guess, we had our ambassador to China now, Chito Santa Romana. He was a guest here one time, and he said, I know you will agree with me, Mr. Lucio, that we have these conflicts with China, but the conflict, especially in the South China Sea, should not be at the front and center of our relationships with China, because we have other dimensions in the relationship.
I think that's very important to stress.
And with that, thank you very much, sir, for guesting in our show.
Always
thank
welcome.
Thank you for enlightening us, as always.
At bumalik ka dito. Before you leave for the States.
We'll always wait for you to come back. Okay.
Thank you very much. I'm Kaloy Tabunda.
I'm Alma Angeles with Professor
Lucio Pitlo.
Thank you, sir.
Right.
Thank you,
ma'am. So much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're one with
25.